In an hour unlooked for by men, this doom befell, on the 39th day since the passing of the fleets. Then suddenly fire burst from the Meneltarma, and there came a mighty wind and a tumult of the earth, and the sky reeled, and the hills slid, and Númenor went down into the sea. Hey everyone, Yoyston here, and I hope you all are doing well, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we are going to be taking a look at what happened specifically during the Downfall of Númenor. And while I might mention a bit of the context up to the fall, this video will mostly focus on the Downfall of Númenor. Links to other relevant videos and articles will be in the description and cards, so check those out for a larger understanding of these events and the context and history of Númenor. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. As the centuries of the Second Age had passed, Númenor gradually declined as the people longed for immortality, long-lived though they were. This, along with their growing distrust of the elves and the ways of tradition, led to the shadow creeping over Númenor. After the capture of Sauron by the armies of the king Ar-pharazon, who had married and supplanted his cousin Tar-Miriel, the years of Númenor were limited. Sauron rose from prisoner to the king's greatest advisor, and as the king approached his inevitable death, the shadow lengthened even more. However, not all embraced these new ideas of distrust. For the faithful, those who held to tradition, those who still knew the elven tongues and called them friends, and worshipped Eru and the Valar, were subjected and persecuted in Númenor, and by this time of great darkness, they had been long removed from their ancestral home in Andúnië, western Númenor. This minority of Númenorians lived near the great seaport of Romena in the east, where the King's Men, the faction that most feared death and distrusted the elves and their ways, and had a majority of the power in Númenor, feared the faithful would be treacherous, especially as the island kingdom continued towards its fall. Ar-pharazon, with the advice of Sauron, turned to the worship of Melkor, Morgoth, who had been defeated in the previous age of the world, and a temple that worshipped him was built in the capital city of Númenor, Ar-Menellos. The White Tree of Númenor, which Tar-Miriel's father Tar-Palantir portended was connected to the line of kings, and if the tree fell, the line would follow soon after, was eventually cut and burned in the temple of Morgoth, lighting the first fire. This fire would soon burn many men, the faithful, that were hunted down and burned as sacrifices to Sauron's master. Yet whether it was for their fear of death, or their desire to do evil, or the pride of their power, or all of these things, the king's men continued to follow Ar-pharazon and thereby Sauron's will. Yet there were still some who held onto the light and the values that had once made the people of Númenor admirable. Elendil, father of Elendil the Tall, who had been the last lord of Andúnië, and his line were actually of an offshooting branch of the line of kings. His grandson Isildur had saved a sapling of the White Tree of Númenor, Nimloth, before it was burned, and so the offshooting branch of the kings retained yet an offshooting sapling of the White Tree. But time was running out for Númenor at large, and for all of its people, those of good hearts and those with hearts of darkness. In 3310, Sauron convinced Ar-pharazon to raise a great armada, to assail the Valar and to wrest immortality from them within these circles of the world. The tyrant assented to this, taking years to build his vast armada and fleet, all while Sauron celebrated the fall of the West. Some years into this, Elendil bade farewell to his family, offering some last words of wisdom and advice. And then he went west to warn Manwë and plead for mercy upon men and deliverance from Sauron. Knowing that he would break the ban of the Valar, and that he would likely not return, he did warn Elendil, his son, to prepare ships to head for a land of exile, wherever it was. And so indeed he went west and never returned, but it could be that his deeds had an impact on what was yet to come. Before Ar-pharazon's fleet of Númenor made for the west, the Valar sent many warnings against this evil. Great clouds shaped as eagles, which blotted out the sun, and some of which had lightning beneath their cloudy wings. Other lightning would strike and slay some men upon the island. A bolt even struck Morgoth's temple and shore the dome asunder, wreathing it in flame, and Sauron stood upon the pinnacle, defying this lightning, and the men saw this and called him a god, and they continued to follow him. Ar-pharazon pressed on, even as the final warning came, and smoke issued from the holy peak of Meneltarma, and the earth trembled beneath their feet, and the sea roared. Then came Ar-pharazon's call to arms, which Elendil and his people ignored, and Elendil went upon his ship along with the other ships prepared for his men and sons, awaiting a sign to leave the Bay of Romena and Númenor. a sign that hopefully would come from his father, although Elendil told him to not hope for one. Elendil also avoided Sauron's men, who attempted to bring him to the temple to burn him. Finally, as Ar-pharazon's armada was ready, Sauron withdrew to the innermost circle of his temple, and Ar-pharazon prepared to leave with his men. Out of the west came the eagles, arrayed as if for battle, and the west was red behind them, and it seemed as though they glowed, lit with a flame of great fury. But Ar-pharazon and his people hardened their hearts, going forth to the doom that awaited them, and the armada set out for the west, for war against the gods. They would go to Valinor, and through Manwë's prayer to Eru, they would be imprisoned under falling hills in Valinor, while their fleets went into a chasm in the sea between Númenor and the undying west. On the 39th day since the passing of Ar-pharazon's fleet, in 3319 of the Second Age, the downfall came to Númenor in a time unlooked for. As suddenly the peak of Meneltarma burst into flame, a mighty wind came as did a great earthquake, and the skies reeled, and the island was rent asunder, thrown down into the sea by Eru himself. Tarmiriel had attempted to climb Meneltarma too late, and the waters overtook her. And though she was of a different, more virtuous mind than her husband and cousin, her cries were lost in the wind and the waves of the sea. She was not able to save her people, nor herself. Sauron, throughout all of this, had laughed for the downfall of Westernesse. He laughed at the trumpets of Ar-pharazon, proud and weak, at the thunder of the storm that had come to Númenor, and finally he laughed at his own thought, thinking that he would finally be rid of the Edain, the men who had stood against Morgoth, and the Dunedain their descendants, who had troubled him much, and had prevented him from destroying the elves in Middle-earth. And Sauron was taken in the downfall, as was his temple for his old master, having his victory and caring naught for this corporeal form. Yet as the island drowned, and the Dark Lord with it, he did lose his ability to ever take on a fair form again. His dark spirit flew back to Mordor, taking his one ring with him, where he wore it again as the tyrant of Middle-earth. But he was not so free from the men of the West as he had hoped. Whether or not Elendil's plea had reached the Valar and aided his family and friends, the 9 ships of Elendil and his sons were pushed out far away from the shores of Númenor by a great wind, and they went east to Middle-earth. And many great artifacts of Númenor, but not all of them, went to Middle-earth with them as well. Elendil's 4 ships landed in the north, while Isildur's 3 and Anarian's 2 landed in the south. The men of the west would establish the kingdoms in exile, Arnor and Gondor, and Elendil would be the first High King. We will end this video with the words of Elendil as he first walked upon the shores of Middle-earth, his oath. Et erelo indorena utulien, sino me maruvan arhildinyar, tenambar meta. Out of the great sea, to Middle-earth I am come. In this place will I abide, and my heirs unto the ending of the world. From this tale we see the price of pride and fear. We should humble ourselves in the nature of what it means to be human, and be thankful for the gifts we are given and enjoy the time we have in this world, looking outward to help others with the time that we all have left. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this deep dive into the Downfall of Númenor. Please check out the articles and videos in the description and cards, as well as the Akallabeth and the Silmarillion, where much of our tale is explicitly pulled from for more context and information. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and share this with a friend. Let me know your thoughts on the Downfall in the comments below. It is such an important moment in all of Tolkien's works, and there is an argument to be made that this is the most important moment actually in all of the history of Middle-earth, as it shapes how the world of Arda and the rule of men would continue, since the gift of Westernesse to men had been taken away. It is sorrowful, and there's much we can learn from it, both in and outside of the works. Also, the new book, The Fall of Númenor by J.R.R. Tolkien, edited by Brian Sibley, is out for release. A link to that is in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider getting some candles from our friends Mythologie Candles through the link in the description below, and please check out our merch and Patreon. Thanks to our Valor Tier patrons and YouTube members: Peter Shepard, Jonathan Putnam, Mark Kralik, Blair Scott, Merton, John Hume, Sam McBee, Matt Zabach, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibbs, Reese Jenkins, Adam Petrlik, Anthony Harmon, Dorwin Gray, Arthur Merlin, DJ Vaught, Dale Davis, Alex Grimes, and King's Wild Project. Thank you so much to all of our patrons and YouTube members. Please subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. I'll see you all again next Sunday with a video on the history of Denethor, Steward of Gondor. You all are the best, my friends. Thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.